Hey, it's your friend CJ here, and I'm excited to be bringing you guys my Week 1 Team Builder Battle for the UBL Season number 3. This is where our championship defense starts. It all begins right here versus our opponent, DeathlyiAm, and his Tennessee Trubbish. Make sure you go down to the description below, check out Deathly. If you're not already familiar, chances are that you are familiar with him. He's got a nice-sized YouTube channel and a good Twitch following. He's been doing lots of Pokemon content lately, shiny hunting, things like that. Has a lot of Call of Duty pedigree as well. I think he and A-Drive go back a few years as well. So really excited to be having him as part of the UBL this season. I think he was the most high-profile addition that we had. So it's always nice to be beating new people. I mean, regardless of the size of the channel they have, right? Like, you know, whether they have 100 or 10,000 or however, it doesn't really matter. Deathly and I, we had a nice conversation leading up to this match. It turns out we have we're trying to figure out like some things in common that we have going on there. He's moving up to my area sometime this year, so it's cool to talk about that. But I digress. Let me break down this matchup, and then we can hop on into the battle itself. I don't want to waste too much of your guys' time. As you can see, Deathly has Aerodactyl, Ribombee, Mienshao, Mega Kangaskhan, HeraHorde, Rotom Frost, Nidoqueen, Volcanion, Vaporeon, Dhelmise, and Bronzong. So, it's a very good team. The thing that stands out to me is his dual water typing. So water is one of the types I've been most worried about with this draft, and right off the bat I have to go up against double water. So that's very scary for me. Volcanion in particular, it's such a good wall breaker. Like, my best water resist, of course, is Ferrothorn, but he does have the fire coverage to hit me up. And, you know, there's also the fact that Steam Eruption has a good chance to burn. So he will be reducing my ability to hit him with much damage if I want to go for power whips or anything like that versus him. Hydreigon's probably the next scariest thing. Hydreigon just in general is so hard to switch into, just because it has such good coverage. It's pretty strong, it's fast, has good pivoting option and U-turn, and then like bulky taunt roost sets are also amazing on Hydreigon. So yeah, I just don't have the best counterplay for something like that, so I'm gonna have to be very careful with Hydreigon. It goes without saying that Mega Kangaskhan is spooky. Parental Bond is a really nice ability. Gives him the ability to hit twice with a move. The second time they did nerf it. It used to be half on the second attack, half damage, but now it's only quarter damage. But if you are going for something like Power Up Punch, then you do get basically still those 2 hits, and you still get to +2 while going for an attacking move. So it's not half bad. It gets good priority in Sucker Punch. It's relatively bulky. Its normal typing actually works out relatively well for it. There's not a lot of typings that can one-shot it, so it should be able to get off that. Power Up Punch for free if it wants, and then go for a Sucker Punch or Double Edge or whatever. Drain Punch is also a good option. I think I have a bunch of good Kangaskhan responses, so there's a decent chance that he leaves it on the bench. But I have to be prepared for it all the same, just because it's one of those Pokemon that can sort of snowball out of control if you don't prepare properly. So I think those are the top 3 things I'm worried about. There's obviously other things like Nidoqueen with, I think, like Earth Power, Ice Beam, and probably Flamethrower is a really good moveset to hit everything on my team. It hits almost everything super effective perfectly, so that's wild. I guess Mew and like Sneasel aren't hit super effectively, but like Mew is probably the only main threat to Nidoqueen. Sneasel obviously like doesn't switch into Nidoqueen ever, and Nidoqueen doesn't really want to switch in on Sneasel either, so it's not really it's a kind of a moot point. But yeah, those are the main threats going in. Let me start off with my first Mon, which is my Rocky Helmet Mew with Taunt Roost. So I really wanted Taunt Roost because if you go back and you look at everything that's slower than Mew, so like something like Bronzong, Vaporeon, Nidoqueen, even Rotom to an extent, they're all going to probably want to beat it with status. But if I taunt them, then they're not going to be able to do that. It's particularly useful for something like Vaporeon, which really wants to like Wish Pass and do annoying stuff like that. If I can prevent it from Wish Passing, that's fantastic. I definitely want to have that happen. But yeah, like besides Hydreigon, he just doesn't have a great way to like break this Mew. And he can't status me if I taunt his slower mons first. He has to have something like Toxic on Mienshao or Aerodactyl to really break this Mew. I wanted a Fizz Def with Rocky Helmet as a switch into Mienshao, and also as a switch into Kangaskhan, so we can get off that Rocky Helmet recoil onto Kangaskhan going for Return or Sucker Punch or whatever. Then we can throw off a Drain Punch, get a pretty nice chunk of recovery. We have a lot of defense in here, enough speed for a max speed Nidoqueen if he chooses to bring that. So it's not a very flashy Mew spread, but I think it's very hard for him to deal with. He really only has Hydreigon as a reliable way to deal with this Mew, so that's quite nice. I also have Iron Barbs, Akaberry, Ferrothorn to be like a backup check to Kangaskhan, but mostly I want this here as a switch in to Vaporeon, to Aerodactyl, to Ribombee. There's a lot of the other sort of like scarier mons on the team like that. It is a Dragon Resist, which is nice, but like obviously we're still going to take a chunk of damage from dark type tips, and it does get Flamethrower coverage, so that's nice. And I can also use this to switch into to Delmice, because I don't really switch into that well otherwise. I do have Miltank to potentially kind of wall it, because I'm going to be immune to 2 of its main stab moves. It's just the Anchor Shot that I wouldn't be immune to. So yeah, Leech Seed Toxic, so kind of like a double status this week. Leech Seed I wanted so that way I could do damage to Bronzong, and then Toxic I wanted so I could do damage to Delmice. I wanted a Rock Setter, and then Gyro Ball felt like it was really important for Arrow, Ribombee. It also does like 50% damage to Kangaskhan and stuff like that. It's just a mixed spread. Nothing too special here going on in the EVs. Next I have a Trick Scarf Togekiss. So the Trick Scarf is like my backup way of dealing with Vaporeon if Taunt Mew ends up not working out, or if it gets taken out early or things like that. It also has some robustness versus I guess like defensive Nidoqueen if he wants to bring that in versus Togekiss. Bronzong would be really nice to trick a Scarf onto. Just like bulky Togekiss in general is a little problematic for him. I feel like Roost is required in order to have Togekiss deal with Hydreigon once I get rid of my Scarf. Because, yeah, Hydreigon, like I said, one of the biggest threats to my team overall. I don't have, this is like my best Dark Resist. I don't have amazing Dark Resist on my team besides Togekiss. Air Slash in general is just nice versus the team. Obviously, he does have a few resists, being Bronzong and Rotom and Aerodactyl. But Rotom I'm not really expecting, and then like Bronzong and Aerodactyl I have good responses to, so I'm not so worried about that. So yeah, trying to use this to neuter certain mons. Air Slash can potentially be in a win condition on its own, but maybe not. Yeah, and it's just a bulky check to Hydreigon. Then I have an Expert Belt Electivire. We're starting to get into the more offensive members here. It's been mostly like bulk and defensive options up to this point. So Electivire is actually pretty scary offensively in this matchup. Everything that it's faster than on my opponent's team it has super effective moves for. So it can hit Rotom with Fire Punch, Nidoqueen with Ice Punch, Electivire and Vaporeon, or sorry, not Electivire, Volcanion and Vaporeon. Electivire can hit it with Wild Charge. I have both Fire Punch and Ice Punch for Delmice, and I have Fire Punch for Bronzong. So it only seemed natural that we went with Expert Belt on this set because I can hit literally everything on the team super effectively. That it's like faster than, like all the stuff that's faster than it, I don't really care, but like I don't need to use this to wall break those things, right? We have enough speed on this thing for Rotom. Max attack, rest into HP, nothing really special going on here. We Volt Switch for momentum because we didn't really need another move for anything on the team. Then we have, I think, what I would say are my 2 main win cons. I think Mew in itself can be a win con, like I said, especially if Hydreigon is either removed or weakened. Like, if it's not like a Life Orb variant and we're at like full HP, we can probably take 1 Dark Pulse and then go for a Drain Punch versus it, and then just win versus everything else. But my next 2 are like my offensive win cons. And so first I have a Agility Blaziken here, just with dual stabs. The speed allows me to outspeed Scarf Mienshao if he chooses to run that. Scarf Mienshao kind of makes sense as his best way of revenge killing Aerodactyl. I put Baton Pass in the last slot, so obviously like the Baton Pass rules are important for every league. Baton Pass can be used in this league, but not to pass any stats. So I do not plan on clicking Agility with Baton Pass here. I only want it for mid-game momentum. Because, you know, it would be nice to try and lure in maybe something like Vaporeon with Baton Pass and then go into my Electivire. Something like that would be nice. But then in the late game, I just need to click Agility, and then my dual stabs is enough. Maybe the fact that I have Baton Pass will be enough to trick him into thinking that I'm Choice Scarf, where I'm in fact a Fight Z variant. Fight Z is just nice. It's my best way of breaking through some of the annoying stuff that's on his team. I guess like Bronzong already dies to Flare Blitz, but like it's nice to be able to like hit Volcanion as hard as possible. I don't have to worry about hitting High Jump Kick versus Kangaskhan or Hydreigon or anything like that. So yeah, if like this Pokemon can kind of win even without any prior chip damage on his team, but like if I can get chip, like I said, on like the Nidoqueen in particular, Volcanion, I think I should be in really good shape. You know, there's not much special about this set, but it's very potent. Last but not least, I do have a 4 attacks Mega Aerodactyl. I have enough speed on this Aerodactyl to outspeed max speed Timid, Choice Scarf, Volcanion, so I can revenge kill that thing easily with Stone Edge. I almost brought like a bulkier variant of Aerodactyl, but 4 attacks is just so good. He doesn't switch into it, period. Like Nidoqueen's really the only kind of bulky response that he has to it, but Earthquake does a ton of damage to that. So yeah, like if I can weaken Bronzong and Nidoqueen, this can also win on its own in the late game. I guess I also need some chip on Kangaskhan because Stone Edge does like 55 to 60 or so to like a uninvested Mega Kangaskhan, so I need some chip on that too. But yeah, this is just so scary versus him. He doesn't have a good way to revenge kill it unless he forces a Scarf onto like Mienshao or Hydreigon or something like that. So really scary option in the late game as well. So that's going to be the team. I'm sorry that took a little bit longer than I had hoped. This is how it always happens with me. If you're not familiar, I always say, oh yeah, I'm going to power through this, and then it takes me like 10 minutes to go through the actual team. So without further ado, let's switch to the battle. Where, as you can see, Deathly has chose to bring his Volcanion, his Mienshao, his Kangaskhan, Nidoqueen, Hydreigon, and Delmise. So, very relieved not to see a couple of main Pokemon here. Vaporeon, it was something that I thought was going to be really annoying if he chose to bring it. It just checks a lot on my team. The only thing that can really deal with it is Electivire. Like, yes, I do have Ferrothorn to resist Scald, but I don't appreciate being burned, and I'm not actually packing Grass Stab this week. I'll be relying on doing damage to it with Leech Seed and Toxic. And like Toxic versus a normal Vaporeon with Heal Bell isn't even that scary. So anyway, long story short, relieved not to see Vaporeon. Some of his like scary setup threats, such as like Ribombee and even to a lesser extent Aerodactyl, are on the bench, so I'm pretty happy about that. But that does mean that he unfortunately brought the Delmise. Delmise is definitely scary in this matchup because I don't have a good switch into it. I really just have Ferrothorn to try and switch in. I resist 2 of its stabs. I don't resist Shadow Claw though. It's weird that Delmise has 3 stabs. Otherwise, like Hang, I'm a little surprised to see it because I do have Iron Barbs on Ferrothorn and I do have Rough Skin on Druddigon. So I have 2 potential Rough Skin Rocky Helmet users, you know, or equivalent abilities to do chip damage to it. So a little surprised to bring it, but you know, he could come up with a set that works versus me. I don't doubt it. Yeah. So the 2 leads that I'm really expecting from him are either Mienshao or Hydreigon. Because those are kind of like his 2 obvious Scarf users. He could potentially lead with either of them and go for like a U-turn versus whatever I choose to lead with. And so because those are the 2 things I'm expecting, I do want to lead with Togekiss, because Togekiss should deal with those 2 mons relatively well. So without further ado, I'm just going to hit play, and we're going to hop on into this battle. So good luck, have fun, Deathly. Let's make this a very exciting start to the season. And hope that it's nice clean battle, and definitely a fun one. An exciting finish would be really nice. Yeah, that's about all of the superlatives I can come up with before the match starts. I'm gonna lead with my Togekiss. As you can see, he actually leads with his Volcanion, so this is bad because I don't have a switch into Volcanion. So I'm like, well, shoot, let me just go ahead and click Air Slash and try and figure out what sort of set he is. Like if he's Choice Scarf, he's not actually gonna outspeed me, and I can judge from the damage what kind of set he is. But based on what he takes from my Air Slash, this is without a doubt a max special defense assault vest Volcanion, which is just bonkers. It totally blows my mind. I'm not 100% sure what he was bringing it for. I guess Gengar, as that's my scariest special attacker. I definitely would not have been able to 2-KO this thing with like a non-life orb Gengar. But after I see that it's not very attack invested, it didn't even do half to my Togekiss with Sludge Wave. So I had to go into my Electivire, and I am able to take it out with a Wild Charge. It was a little bit of a tough play there, just because the switch into Nidoqueen was so obvious. But I thought there was a less than 0% chance that he would think that I'm a special variant of Electivire, and he can stay in and take like a Volt Switch or Thunderbolt pretty easily. I'm not sure if the Wild Charge caught him off guard or not, but I do go for that. And I thought he would go to Nidoqueen to take the electric move, but yeah, Volcanion is just too scary versus my team to risk over predicting. So decided just to go for Wild Charge. I'm able to take it out. He brings in the Nidoqueen, and I unfortunately get off freeze on it with the Ice Punch. I mean, unfortunately, because you don't ever want these games to have hacks, right? Like, or at least you want it to be as minimal as possible, just because it's uncompetitive and it's not fun. I asked him if he wanted to just try and thaw while I clicked electric moves, but he said just play it out, it's fine. So big thanks to Deathly for being a good sport. He ends up preserving his Nidoqueen, goes into his Mienshao, takes not too much damage actually from the Ice Punch, a little bit less than I expected. He's not like Fizz Def or anything, but he probably has a little bit of HP investment. And then he throws off the Drain Punch to knock me out. So he shows Life Orb, leads him to believe that he might be Regenerator, because just Life Orb and Regenerator have really great synergy. And as I bring in my Aerodactyl to threaten out with the Wing Attack, he does now choose to go back into his Nidoqueen and sack it off. So Nidoqueen was his only potential rock user this game. So there's definitely not going to be any Stealth Rocks up on my side of the field, which is really nice. I land this Wing Attack, and he actually shows Poison Point. I don't know for sure if that was like an intended thing on his end, or if he was hoping to be Sheer Force and just had a genning issue. But it definitely worked out for him here. It's definitely funny, because it's like, in a way, it's like a small, tiny bit of justice for this freeze. Obviously, like, it's not exactly the same. Poison Point's like 30% chance to poison, and like the consequences of being poisoned are way less than the consequences of being frozen. So yeah, it's definitely not 1-to-1, but I just thought it was a little bit of like, I don't know, like cosmic justice that he landed that Poison Point, especially if it was unintentional. I thought that was very funny. So anyway, he is now going to go into his Dhelmise versus my Aerodactyl. I could probably do a pretty good chunk of damage to this thing with my Wing Attack on Aerodactyl, but I don't think I can one-shot it, and it can definitely one-shot me with Anchor Shot. And so I don't want to sack my Aerodactyl. Even though it's poisoned, it's still going to be a good win con this game. I have 6 turns where I can click moves versus his team until I die to poison, so it doesn't seem worth it to sack my Aerodactyl. I go into my Ferrothorn, click and get up my Stealth Rocks as he goes into his Kangaskhan. So this is a reasonably good counter to most Kangaskhan, so I decided to stay in and click Gyro Ball, as he reveals the Fire Blast. So that's a nice tech on his end, so that way he doesn't have to take any Iron Barbs or Rocky Helmet or Rough Skin damage. What I'm surprised by is how much damage that Fire Blast did. It actually suggests that it is max special attack modest. So obviously the physical offense on Mega Kangaskhan is way better than its special offense, but with that sort of investment, it still does a pretty good dent to my Ferrothorn. I'm not able to leave it in. I want to keep the Ferrothorn around just so I can potentially Toxic the Dhelmise later. And I go into my Mew, and he goes for the Shadow Ball. Like, it wasn't until like the Shadow Ball hit that I realized that this was actually modest. I should have realized that he could potentially go for the Shadow Ball, but luckily I live pretty comfortably, and I go for a Drain Punch and get myself up to 90 HP. So for max attack modest, a Shadow Ball does a maximum of 92 damage, so it's in my favor to live this. And as you do see, I live on 8 HP, and I'm able to throw off a final Drain Punch and take out this Kangaskhan. So a little bit of a dicey situation there, could have been a lot worse if I wasn't able to live, but Mew came in clutch. Was able to live the special attack even though I was more physically defensive invested, so that was very, very nice. Now this Mienshao comes in here. Mew is kind of weakened to the point where it doesn't have a whole lot of value, so I'm just going to stay in here and sack it off to the Poison Jab. It is nice that he goes for the Poison Jab because it is a contact move. I can hit it with Rocky Helmet, and he does take that Life Orb recoil. So basically, I can come into Togekiss here and potentially collect a kill. It depends on what sort of Hydreigon he has. Hydreigon, I guess it's not like straight up 2 KO'd by Air Slash, but it definitely does a lot of damage. He is going to sack off his Dhelmise to my Air Slash. I was actually surprised to see how quickly that Dhelmise dropped. Clearly it's not Assault Vest or anything like that, but I could have gone for another Air Slash and removed it anyway. So now this HeraHorde comes in here. HeraHorde is, like I said, a very big threat, but there's basically two things going on here. Either he is Scarf, he locks himself in a Flash Cannon, and then I can go into Blaziken, click Agility, win the game. Or he is not Choice Scarf. I get off about 35% with an Air Slash, and probably put him in range of dying to Aerodactyl's Stone Edge. And then I could potentially just win the game outright with Aerodactyl. As played, it does turn out that he is Choice Scarfed. He locks himself into into a Flash Cannon as I lock myself into Air Slash. I miss an Air Slash, but it doesn't really matter that much because now I can go to my Blaziken. He's either forced to spam Flash Cannon versus me, or he has to withdraw into his Mienshao. And in either situation, my agility here is extremely free. Because Flash Cannon is not going to be able to do a lot of damage, and obviously if he switches out, he can't do a lot of damage. At this point, I'm guaranteed to outspeed both the Mienshao and the HeraHorde. Even if he's like a funny, like, fake-out variant of Mienshao, he's not going to be able to, like, sort of stall me out, so to speak. Like, he can't fake out, pivot, and, like, chip me down with fake out that way because he only has, like, one sack left, being HeraHorde. So I do take out the Mienshao with the Flare Blitz, which is really nice. And then he goes into his HeraHorde, his last Pokemon. Like I said, it's Choice Scarf, but I'm guaranteed to outspeed a Choice Scarf HeraHorde, even if it's max speed Timid. And I'm just going to throw off the very stylish All Out Pummeling versus this thing. It feels like a very appropriate ending to this game. It ended up being a 3-0. And it is a bummer that we ended up freezing that Nidoqueen. I think that definitely changed the pace of the game. Because he couldn't use that to get up rocks or potentially pivot in on Aerodactyl. Like, the fact that I saved my my Electivire didn't end up mattering because I was going to sack it off to the Nidoqueen. Like, once the Volcanion was dead, I really did not need it anymore for anything on the team. The only other thing that it could potentially do a little bit of damage to was the Dhelmise, but I have Aerodactyl and Togekiss both with super effective Flying Stab to hit Dhelmise extremely hard. It's just the Nidoqueen, and I wanted just a little bit of chip damage on Nidoqueen so I could take it out with EQ on my Aerodactyl. So I was going to sack it. And like, so he ended up being able to go into his Mienshao, kill me with Drain Punch, and not have too much health lost on his Mienshao. But like, having the Mienshao in as my Electivire fainted instead of Nidoqueen was definitely annoying for him because that gave me a free switch into my Aerodactyl, applied a lot of pressure. If the Nidoqueen had killed, I would have had to go probably into Mew, and he had some decent options for switching into Mew, like with HeraHorde and Dhelmise. So yeah, like, it's hard to say like what's the result if I hadn't frozen or whatever, but it totally changes the pace of the game, and like, he felt like he was on a back foot the whole time. Or at least that's how I would have felt in that situation. I do want to give you a big shout out to Deathly. He was a good sport about the hacks. I would have probably been saltier than he was. So yeah, he really was a good sport about it. So thanks to Deathly. Really good game. Really nice start to the season. 3-0. Definitely can't complain about that. That's a really solid win. It's going to put us on a good pace to trying to defend our championship. So I hope you guys like that match. We have another match coming up next week, of course, versus HeraHorde. And we do have some MPL action coming up this weekend. If this battle goes up on Friday, which I'm hoping it does, we are going to be having a MPL playoff match going up tomorrow versus Root. He and I battled earlier in the MPL, so it's a little bit of a rematch for us. So make sure you check that out. Check out the next UBL battle, and of course the best way to do all of that is to like this video and subscribe. That way you can stay up to date on all of my latest UBL and MPL videos, as well as all my other latest and greatest gaming and Pokemon content. So thank you once again for watching. Till the next time, I'll see you all later.